It was the week before the Fall Harvest Festival in Hollow Creek, a small town tucked into the rolling hills of upstate America. The streets were lined with orange and gold leaves, the smell of wood smoke drifting from chimneys, and the laughter of children playing among hay bales echoed through the crisp autumn air. Everyone in town was preparing for the festival, decorating their porches with pumpkins and corn stalks, while local farmers displayed their gourds and homemade pies at the town square. But on the outskirts of Hollow Creek, at the far edge of the town where the forest grew thick and shadows lingered longer than they should, stood a house no one dared enter. It was known as the Harvest House, a crumbling, decaying structure. Its windows were dark and cracked, and the paint had long peeled away, revealing warped, rotting wood beneath. For decades, stories of the house's evil had circulated in hushed tones. Locals said it was cursed, that the walls themselves were alive, that anyone who entered never returned the same or didn't return at all. Children dared each other to run up and touch the front porch, but most never made it past the rustic gate. Emma and Ryan were newcomers to Hollow Creek, young and adventurous, with a shared love for exploring abandoned places. The Harvest House had been a constant topic in town gossip, and they had heard every terrifying rumor: whispers of blood flowing under the floorboards, shadows that moved with minds of their own, and voices that begged intruders to leave. The thrill of fear was irresistible. It was late afternoon when they decided to enter. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long, jagged shadows across the overgrown lawn. Emma tightened the scarf around her neck and glanced at Ryan. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, trying to mask his own nervousness. "Of course. It's just an old house. Ghost stories. That's all." They stepped through the rusty gate, the metal shrieking in protest, and walked up the uneven path toward the front door. The air grew colder with every step. When they reached the entrance, Ryan pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, as if the house itself were groaning. A gust of wind swept past them, carrying with it the faint scent of decay and iron-like blood. Inside, the floorboards moaned under their weight. Dust swirled in the dim light filtering through the broken windows. The house was silent, but the silence was heavy, suffocating, almost alive. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing the horrors inside. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, and the walls were streaked with something dark and sticky. Emma reached out, her fingers brushing it. It was cold, slick, and sticky. She recoiled in disgust. "It looks like blood," she whispered. Ryan swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. In the corner of the room, an old music box began to play by itself. Its melody was warped and wrong, slow and distorted. The tune made the hairs on the back of Emma's neck stand on end. They followed the sound into the living room, where the shadows seemed thicker, darker, almost solid. Suddenly, a faint whisper drifted across the room, chilling them to the bone. "Leave or stay forever." Ryan laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. Probably just the wind, but the whisper returned, closer this time, louder, almost angry. Emma grabbed his arm. That wasn't the wind. They pressed further into the house, curiosity overcoming their fear. Every step they took felt heavier, like the air itself was resisting them. The floorboards under Ryan's feet creaked ominously. They found themselves in a narrow hallway lined with broken doors, each one slightly ajar, as though the house were inviting them in. One door at the end of the hall caught Ryan's eye. It was darker than the rest, and from behind it came a faint scuttling sound, almost like claws scraping the wood. Ryan pushed the door open. Darkness spilled into the hallway, swallowing the dim flashlight beams. Then, out of nowhere, a black shadow emerged. It was massive, a writhing silhouette with glowing red eyes. Emma screamed. The shadow lunged at Ryan, wrapping around him with unnatural speed. He struggled, but the weight and force of it pinned into the floor. His cries echoed through the empty house. Emma froze, horror rooting her in place. She could feel the shadow's cold presence pressing against her skin, whispering threats she couldn't quite hear. Ryan thrashed violently, trying to escape, but the shadow's hold was unyielding. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, landing on his trembling body as he fought. Emma wanted to help him, but her legs refused to move. The shadow seemed alive, feeding on their fear, growing stronger with every heartbeat. Then something worse happened. Ryan's body jerked violently, and Emma could see his skin beginning to bruise and tear where the shadow touched him. The smell of iron filled the air. She could see the beginnings of deep, dark welts forming. The flesh breaking beneath the pressure, and the metallic scent of blood grew stronger. Ryan screamed in pain, his voice mingling with the strange whispers that now filled the house. Emma backed toward the hallway, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but part of her wanted to save him. The shadow released Ryan suddenly, and he collapsed to the floor, trembling, soaked in sweat and blood from the cuts the shadow had left. Emma grabbed his hand, but he was barely conscious, mumbling incoherently. Suddenly, the house shifted around them. Walls groaned and floorboards buckled. Shadows twisted and lengthened, crawling along the walls like living things. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of decay and blood. The music box played on, slower now, as if mocking them. Every instinct screamed escape, yet the house seemed to stretch endlessly, hallways twisting impossibly. Emma realized something horrifying. They might not get out. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was hungry. It had chosen them. Every corner they turned, every room they entered, seemed to tighten its grip on their minds, filling them with dread. And then, at the end of the hallway, the shadow reappeared. Red eyes glowing, its form towering and grotesque. It advanced slowly toward Emma. Ryan's weak voice whispered her name, terrified. She knew that if the shadow reached her, she would become its next victim. Emma ran. Heart hammering, breath ragged, she sprinted down the hallways, the house groaning and shifting around her, trying to trap her. Every door she opened led to darkness, every corner seemed endless. The whispers followed her, rising in intensity. Leave or stay forever. Stay forever. Finally, she burst through one door that led to the porch, but as she looked back, the shadow was there, reaching toward her. She stumbled onto the ground outside, gasping for air, the taste of dust and blood in her mouth. Behind her, the house seemed to sigh, almost pleased. Emma scrambled to her feet, tears streaming down her face, and ran toward the town. But she could still hear the whispers, faint and chilling, following her as the sun dipped below the horizon. And she knew deep down that Ryan hadn't made it out, and that the house would be waiting, hungrier than ever for the next intruders. Emma's lungs burned as she sprinted down the winding, leaf-strewn path that led from the harvest house to Hollow Creek. The chill of the autumn night cut through her thin jacket, but she barely felt it. Her focus was on the horror she had just left behind the shadow, Ryan, the blood, and the grotesque violence she had witnessed. Her mind replayed every detail, every whisper, and every glowing red eye. She had escaped, or so she thought. The town seemed deceptively peaceful, bathed in the orange glow of street lamps. People were setting up for the festival, laughing and chatting as if the world beyond their safe streets held no terror. Emma's pace slowed only briefly, her ears straining to hear any sign that the house, or whatever had come from it, was following. But there was silence. 2 quiet dots suddenly, a distant scream pierced the night. Emma froze, her heart hammering. It was Ryan. She didn't know if he was still alive, but instinctively she ran back toward the outskirts of the town, toward the house. Her feet pounded against the ground, crunching through dry leaves, her breath ragged and uneven. The forest seemed darker now, more alive, branches clawing at her face and arms like skeletal fingers trying to pull her down. When she neared the harvest house, the sight that met her eyes made her stomach twist. The front door hung open, swinging gently in the wind. Inside, shadows writhed and shifted unnaturally, and the house seemed to pulse with a sickly energy. The walls oozed dark, sticky fluids, and Emma realized with horror that it wasn't just decay. This was blood, fresh and glistening, coating the floorboards and dripping from the ceiling like some grotesque waterfall dot. She hesitated at the threshold, peering inside. The shadow moved again, faster now, darting between walls like a living nightmare. Then she saw him, Ryan. His body was a grotesque mass of torn flesh and open wounds, blood pooling beneath him in the shape of a distorted star. The shadow hovered above him, eyes glowing like burning coals, whispering in a voice that was not quite human, chilling her to her core. "Stay forever." Emma screamed and stumbled backward, her stomach churning. But there was no time to think. The shadow had noticed her. It shifted suddenly, its massive black form stretching toward her, tendrils of darkness snaking across the floor like living things. The air grew thick and heavy, smelling of iron and rot. Emma felt cold fingers brush her ankle, and she kicked violently, breaking free from an invisible grasp. Her mind raced. She had to get out, had to escape, but the house wasn't letting her go. Every hallway she tried led back into the same room, as if the house itself had become a labyrinth. The music box played again, slow and warped, and the shadows twisted along the walls, forming shapes that looked eerily like human faces, screaming silently. The blood on the floor seemed to pulse with life, reaching toward her shoes like tendrils, sticky and suffocating. Emma ran blindly, stumbling through a narrow doorway into what had once been the kitchen. The air was thick, humid, smelling of iron and decay. On the counter, she saw objects she recognized from her life, her flashlight, her scarf covered in blood, as if the house had collected pieces of her to toy with. Her stomach churned violently. She gagged, turning her head just in time to see a clawed shadow swipe across the counter, knocking a jar of pickled vegetables to the ground. The jar shattered, green brine splattering across the blood-streaked floor dot. Then she saw it. Another figure. Not the shadow this time, but a human form, or what had once been human. The figure was kneeling, hunched, with flesh partially torn and bones visible beneath jagged wounds. Its mouth opened in a silent scream, eyes wide and unseeing, and it lurched toward her. Emma's legs buckled, but she kicked off, scrambling backward, barely avoiding its grasp. The house seemed alive with corpses, or remnants of the people it had claimed before, each twisted and broken, trapped in the endless torment of its walls. Emma's mind screamed at her to run, but her body was nearly spent. She stumbled into the living room, where the shadow waited, patient and terrifying, Ryan's mutilated body beneath it like a warning. She froze. The shadow loomed larger, eyes blazing red, and it whispered in the same chilling tone, "Forever." Then instinct took over. Emma bolted. She ran toward a window, yanking it open and climbing onto the porch roof. The shadow lunged, claws scraping against the siding, splintering wood and leaving deep gouges. Her hands slipped on the slick blood, and she fell to the ground, bruising herself, but scrambling forward. She could hear the whispers all around her now, a chorus of tormented voices pleading and cursing, echoing through the night. Emma dashed through the overgrown yard, past broken fences and twisted trees that seemed to bend toward her, trying to ensnare her in their roots. The forest beyond the house opened into a small clearing, faint moonlight illuminating the path back to the safety of town. But as she ran, the shadows followed. Tendrils of darkness stretched from the house, clawing at her legs, pulling her back. She screamed, tearing free each time. blood from small cuts mingling with sweat and dirt on her face. Finally, she reached the road. Her lungs burned, legs trembling, but she didn't stop. She could hear the faint whispers fading behind her, but the memory of Ryan's death and the house's malevolent presence would haunt her forever. She didn't look back, didn't dare, until the lights of Hollow Creek appeared ahead, the sound of laughter and music greeting her like a false sense of relief. But the terror was not over. That night, in her small apartment in town, she couldn't sleep. Every shadow seemed too long. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like the house breathing. And then she saw it outside her window, on the far edge of Hollow Creek, glowing red eyes staring at her from the darkness. The harvest house was not done. It never would be. Emma realized she had escaped the walls of the house, but not its reach. It had claimed Ryan, it had marked her, and it would continue to hunt, waiting for the next moment when fear could be harvested. Every day, every night, she could feel its gaze, whispering, waiting, promising that one day it would be her turn. The town went on, unaware. People laughed, prepared for the festival, oblivious to the true evil that lingered on the outskirts, watching, patient, hungry. And Emma, wide-eyed and trembling, knew the truth. The harvest house was eternal, its shadow ever hungry, its walls a prison for the souls who dared to enter dog. And in the deepest moments of night, when the wind howled through Hollow Creek and the festival lights dimmed in the distance, she could hear it, whispering just outside her window, "Next time, it will be you."
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.